All right, so ahead of the 2026 NFL season, I'm looking to do like a breakdown of every NFL team, all 32, and see how I like their rookie class, how they match up against their opponents. I'm going to look through their entire schedule, their entire roster, and I'm going to give what I think they could do this year. And I am going to start with a biased one. I'm going to start with my Philly Eagles. I'm going to try not to be biased in this, but let's get ahead on it. I'm going to start with a little bit of a recap of the last season for Philly. Strong team, 11-6, won the division. First time a team from the NFC East has repeated as division champs since 2003, I believe, when the Eagles did it. It was after 2003, but I don't know the exact number off my head. I should have checked that. But their last game of the season was against the 49ers in the playoffs. They obviously lost, and the team looked awful. The defense was going strong, like they did all season. The defense fought through adversity. Once the Kobe Dean came back, that defense was phenomenal. That defense was a top 5 defense in the league once the Kobe Dean came back. The problem really did start with the offense, though. The offense throughout the whole year was inconsistent. Every once in a while, Ken Batula would call a really good game. I think back to the Week 8 Giants game, where that was a very good called game. But then you look at other games like the Detroit game, the Bills game, the Packers game, and the Niners game, where the offense was horrible. They couldn't mesh. The play calls were awful. It was hitch route, A.J. Brown deep ball, all that stuff. The O-line was not good this year, and from the looks of it, it was because of Nick Sirianni and Kevin Batula meddling without, one of the greatest O-line coaches, Jeff Stoutland, knowing. So there's a lot to build upon from last season, because last season, yeah, they had a winning record. Their record looks good on paper. They won the division, but they were not a good team. They played a really weak division. And there was a lot of games where they just looked awful. They lost 4 straight games. With the Chargers game, where Jalen Hurts had 5 turnovers. Were all the turnovers his fault? No. It was also a very good defense, but all those turnovers, that's a lot of turnovers. That's not championship football, and Jalen Hurts prides himself on that. That's one thing they got to look for. Yeah, A.J. Brown was horrendous that game. He dropped touchdowns. He dropped balls into interceptions. But also Jalen Hurts, towards that stretch, the Chargers game, the Dallas game, the Chicago game especially, it felt like Jalen Hurts was just forcing the ball to A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown was so unhappy with the situation in Philadelphia that Jalen Hurts was trying to comfort him, make up for it, comfort his diva wide receiver. And there's nothing wrong with diva wide receivers. Normally the divas are the best kind. But that's how the offense looked. The offense struggled all year, and in turn, the defense would get on the field and let up huge plays because they're so gassed from holding down the field while the offense is a quick 3 and out, maybe 1 first down. That's how the Philadelphia Eagles season looked. And they had a phenomenal defense, like I was saying. Quinyon Mitchell, the second-year player, nobody saw this year coming from him. I would love to say I did. I'm a huge Quinyon Mitchell fan. But nobody expected this year from him, where he was, statistically and film-wise, a top 3, top 2 corner. He was up there with the Pat Surtains, the Derek Stingley's. He was there all season. Yeah, he didn't have an interception, but if you look at the actual cornerback stats, you would know that he was phenomenal all season. Yeah, in the playoff game, he got beat really bad, and he let up that huge play, the first offensive pass. But he came back out in that game, didn't allow another catch after that drive, and had 2 interceptions and 2 pass breakups. And now talking about the defense, looking at the defense, as long as Vic Fangio is ahead of that defense, I have full faith in them. You have 2 all-pro corners. A D tackle when he's healthy is one of the best in the league. Jordan Davis, who just broke out, a brand new edge, and a brand new corner. Reek Woolen, yeah, you can say what you want about him. He had a lot of flaws in Seattle, especially last year when he got benched. He taunts a lot, not great, but he is one of the best man corners. If Reek Woolen is playing at his full potential, not letting that stuff get in his way, the Eagles have the best corner tree. And yeah, it sucks that they lost Christian Parkinson, because he would have fixed that real fast. But then you also get a guy like Jonathan Grenard, who, yeah, he's not an elite edge rusher like Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett, but he's still a phenomenal guy that you want to have on your line. He does not have the sack numbers but he has the pressures. He has everything else. He's good in the run game. And hopefully he can help a guy like Nolan Smith Jr., who has really struggled and is looking like a bust, finally break out and look like a premier first-round edge rusher that he was supposed to be. Overall, the defense, I think, will still be phenomenal this year. Really, all they lost, Reed Blankenship. That's going to be a huge loss. Like right now, the Eagles are looking at Marcus Epps as the starting safety next to Drew Makuba. And you lost Jalen Phillips. But I think they found their Jalen Phillips replacement, and I do expect Howie to trade for another safety, although I do believe that Marcus Epps will be the week 1 starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. Looking at the offense, this Eagles offense had a ton of changes. They really just completely rebuilt their wide receiving core. We'll talk about the biggest one first. A.J. Brown is no longer a Philadelphia Eagle. And say what you want about A.J. Brown, but A.J. Brown has always been a reliable guy when he was in Philly. Yeah, this year he faltered. He struggled in a lot of games. But throughout his Philadelphia career, he has over 4,000 receiving yards. He had at least 7 touchdowns in every year and at least 70 catches. He has been a number 1 guy in Philadelphia, and I do not believe that he is washed. I think the Eagles really got worse with that trade, but at the same time got better. Because I do believe A.J. Brown is still a great pass catcher. But he was just so fed up with the inconsistency, whether it was Jalen Hurts' play or the play calling. And for the other wide receivers, Jahan Dotson's gone. Jahan Dotson was a pretty good 3. He was solid. Every once in a while he'd have a big catch, but in a lot of games he was non-existent, and I think that will change this year. Devontae Smith's the one. Now I know there's a lot of skepticism, there we go, around Devontae Smith being the one. But whenever someone brings it up to me, I say, look at his first season in the league. As a rookie, 900 yards with a year 2 quarterback, which Jalen Hurts could not throw year 2. Everyone wants to say he can't throw now. Year 1 and 2, Jalen Hurts was one of the worst passers in the league. And Devontae Smith still thrived. As a rookie, he thrived. Yeah, 900 yards, yeah. But since then, he's had 1,000 yards in every season except 2024, where he played 14 games. And, that was the Saquon 2K year. So, I do think Devontae Smith will flourish. He's a slot guy. We have seen slot guys dominate the league the past few years. Cooper Kupp, JSN last year, and Puka Nacua last year. I know Puka plays outside too, and they all play outside. But, they're primary slot guys. Nacua is not really a slot guy. I just don't like throwing him in. But then, my concern is with the rest of the receiving core. They completely rebuilt it, and this is the best Philly receiving core that they've had in a while. Malachi Lemon, the rookie. I loved that pick. I said before the draft, he was my 1 or 2 receiver. I couldn't decide if it was him or not. And I was upset when Philadelphia took him at first, because I do think we had bigger needs at the time, but I was so in denial about the A.J. Brown trade. But then outside of him, you have Devontae Wicks, Hollywood Brown, and a bunch of other guys. Just completely rebuilt the core. You also have Darius Cooper, who Philadelphia Eagles are in love with. The organization loves him. Then you got a guy like Johnny Wilson coming off an injury, who's one of the best blocking wide receivers in the league. I think this offense and the receiving game should thrive. And that's not even covering the tight ends, where you have Dallas Goedert returning. And yeah, the tight end room behind him is not great, but you do have Eli Stowers, which I'll talk about him in a minute. Same with Malachi Lemon. I think I call him Malachi, and I'm sorry. But the biggest thing I'm worried about with this Eagles receiving core, you look at their wide receiver 1, 2, 3, even 4. Hollywood Brown, Devontae Smith, Malachi Lemon, and Dontavian Wicks. None of those guys are big receivers. The Philadelphia Eagles have a good receiving core, but once they traded A.J. Brown away, the tallest receiver is 6'1". And that's not necessarily a problem, but I would like to see a bigger guy. A.J. Brown was the Eagles' 50-50 guy, the big, dominant, downfield wide receiver. I don't know who would replace that production, and at the moment, they don't have anyone to. Keeping with the offense, there's no way the O-line could be worse than last year. The O-line had a bad year last year. That's the fact. Cam Jurgens was a Pro Bowler. I love Cam Jurgens. He was not Pro Bowl worthy. And he was first-team Pro Bowl. It wasn't like a substitution. He did not deserve that. He was actually one of the worst Eagles linemen. I know he was playing hurt. Him, Landon Dickerson, and Lane Johnson all playing hurt, missing time. And Tyler Steen was actually really good at right guard. I was very skeptical. but he was very good for his first year and his third year in the league, his first year starting. Jordan Mailata struggled this year, but he still was that great tackle that you want. Same with Lane Johnson when Lane Johnson was on the field. I feel like the O-line struggle, especially in the run game, was the disconnect between Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni with Jeff Stoutland, a legendary O-line coach. I do not believe this O-line could be worse than it was last year. Now, one more position group that we'll talk about for the Eagles offense is quarterback and running back. We're going to group them together. Jalen Hurts. Listen, I am a Jalen Hurts truther and believer. Last year, he struggled. You look at the stats, his stats were pretty good. You watch some film, yeah, it was pretty good. But then, as the offense started to evolve, hitch route, he struggled, obviously. I always look back to the Buffalo game. The Buffalo game was awful. That was some of the worst play calling I've ever seen. But I also can't excuse a game like the Chargers game or the Giants game for play calling. The Chargers game, yeah, not all the interceptions were his fault. I would even argue the fumble wasn't his fault. But he still played really bad in that game. And you look at the first Giants game of the year, Thursday night one, where the Eagles lost by 17, 34-17, upset by the Giants, in Jackson Dart's second start, where he really did struggle passing the ball. And there was a few times this year where Jalen Hurts is a prolific down the field passer, whether you want to agree or not. The stats and the film show that. He is prolific, but this year he really did struggle. Whether it was a disconnect between him and A.J. Brown, whether A.J. Brown would stop running his route early, or Jalen Hurts would simply overthrow him or underthrow him. Him and Devontae Smith really did have that deep threat connection that they've had for a few years, though, and that's great. Now, looking at the running back room, this is a great running back room, in my opinion. I do only think 3 running backs will make the final roster, and I think that will be Saquon Barkley and Tank Bigsby. Those 2 are locks, and sadly, Will Shipley. I am not a Will Shipley guy, but looking at Saquon, yeah, he had a rough year last year. The O-line wasn't good. The team around him was not good on offense. But he is still a phenomenal running back. He is 1 year removed from 2K. He had 1,200 last year. And in the Eagles offense like that, that's pretty impressive. And Tank Bigsby is just another dog that you have behind Saquon when he needs a break, when he's hurt. God forbid he gets hurt. When he's hurt, when he needs a break, just a tough, gritty guy that will get the job done for you. And then Will Shipley. Will Shipley hasn't really shown any strengths. Really, the only great play I could think from him over the past 2 years he's been in the league is that 65-yard rushing play he had against the Commanders in the championship, against the Commanders team defense that wasn't really great anyways, but he also got caught. Like, you could have had a 7-yard touchdown, your first touchdown, but other than that, last year I hated how we used him. Last year we used him as a third down screen merchant or third down run merchant. Like, I don't get that. Hopefully we never see that. Taking a second to look at the offseason moves, specifically free agency, they brought in Hollywood Brown, 1-year deal. They traded for Andy Dalton, and they brought Arnold Ekbakhtiari. I'm sorry, I can't say his name. He's an edge rusher. He was on the Falcons last year. He's not a nobody. I don't expect really any of those 3 guys to do anything. I do think Hollywood Brown could be used in special packages. Like, now that he struggled last year on the Chiefs because he kind of had to be that guy a few games, which sucks. And then looking at Andy Dalton, I think this means either one or 2 things. He's either the emergency third quarterback, because I don't see him being above Tanner McKee at this stage, because Eagles love Tanner McKee, or they trade Tanner McKee, and he's the 2, and then Cole Payton is the 3, who's a rookie, 5th-round rookie. And Arnold, he probably won't play a ton. He'll probably be a rotational edge rusher if we need it. Like, if, again, God forbid, Nolan Smith Jr. is hurt. And then JT Gray, safety. I don't even think he'll make the roster. He's never really played safety. I don't think he'll make the roster. And then Jonathan Jones, that's just good cornerback depth. I do think he will make the roster. That is a veteran cornerback that a lot of teams would love to mentor their rookies. Like, is he good? Is he great? No. Is he good? Not really. But he's not going to start, so it doesn't matter. And then you have Chandler Martin, a linebacker. just a good depth piece. I like it. I don't think he'll play a lot. Only if Jahad Campbell gets hurt again or Zach Bond gets hurt. Then you got Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore and Dontavian Wicks. I'm going to group them together. I don't see Elijah Moore doing absolutely anything on this offense. Elijah Moore is not a great receiver. We know that. But he has good depth. And then Dontavian Wicks. I do think Dontavian Wicks will be the 3. Because, I mean, yeah, he was very inconsistent last year in Green Bay. Drop problems, separation issues. But now he has a better receiving core around him. Like, nothing against any of the Green Bay receivers. But they're no Devontae Smith. Dameon Pierce, I do not think he will make the roster. Me personally, I would want him over Will Shipley. I do not think he'll make the roster, though. Stone Smart, tight end, he will not make the roster. There's no way. And Joe Cheyenne Stranka, he's a linebacker. Again, I'm sorry I mispronounced his name. Again, just depth. I don't really think he'll make the roster either. Like, the Eagles didn't even release his contract details on their website, which is where I'm looking. And then week 1, the big one. It's perfect. That's what they needed. Yeah, last year, Adoree Jackson, towards the end of the season, he was pretty dang good, especially in like the Lions and Packers games. He was good. He was not great. He wasn't a guy you want to start. And then you look at Keely Ringo, who would be the guy before, if Week didn't come in, he'd be the guy. And then we'll talk about Jonathan Grenard as well. I talked about him a little before. He's just a guy that will go out there and play the gritty football that they need, that they struggled with the first half of last season. Now looking at their departures. They have some heavy departures. Reed Blankenship and Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean was one of the best blitzing linebackers in the league and a very good coverage linebacker. Reed Blankenship, he had a down year last year. He struggled in coverage, but before last year, he was a very, very consistent safety who played really good ball and was a ball hawk. He struggled last year, though. He was an awful coverage safety in man and zone. But I think that was a fluke year, and I do think he will do good in Texas. In Houston, more specifically. A.J. Dillon, Jahan Dotson, Kylan Granson. None of those guys were difference makers last year. Again, I talked about Jahan Dotson. He had 1 touchdown on the year. He was all right. Sam Howell, Azeez Ojulari, they're whatever. Jalen Phillips, though, I do want to talk about. Jalen Phillips was pretty good for Philadelphia last year when he played. They gave up a 3rd-round pick for him, which at the time felt like a good pick. Since they didn't re-sign him, not a great pick, not a great trade in my opinion. But I do think it was worth letting him walk over paying him $50 million. Now, yes, he is a good player. He's not $50 million a year worth, though. And then you got Matt Pryor, who's an offensive lineman, Brett Toth, offensive lineman, and Josh Uche. Again, none of those guys really contributed. Josh Uche did when they didn't have any rushers. But he wasn't a guy they wanted to send out there. Now we're looking at re-signs. Grant Calcaterra, he was awful last year. There's no other way to put it. I do think he could be a little better this year. He's not necessarily a tight end that's good at blocking or receiving. He's definitely a better receiver than blocker, and I do think he might be able to do something in this new offense that we'll talk about next, actually. Jordan Davis. I love Jordan Davis, but that contract is a little much, but he definitely earned it, and it kind of did reset the D-tackle market. And then Marcus Epps. The Eagles needed to bring him back. They don't have another safety, and I like that. He has familiarity in this system. He's a decent safety. He's not a bad safety by any means. Dallas Goedert, they would not let him go to free agency. They dragged that out forever. Howie Roseman did not want to let him leave. They brought back Fred Johnson, who has been a great swing tackle the past 2 years for them. He's just a backup, but when he's in, you're not necessarily worried that he's going to make your team worse. Is he Leighton Johnson? No. Is he Jordan Mailata? No. But he's still good, and he's a great 6th man. And then Braden Mann. Great punter. We really need him. Last season, he kind of carried us. Well, apart from the defense, he made sure that our defense didn't start with our backs against the walls every game, and I'm glad that he's back. Now, the Eagles draft. This draft for Philadelphia will not be like last year's or the year before's or even that year. Like, the past few years for the Eagles drafts have been great. They have been arguably probably the best stretch of drafting when you get a guy like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith Jr., who is kind of looking like a bust, Drew Makuba, Jahad Campbell, like, that is a great stretch. I don't think this class will have nearly the impact. I think really the only guy we're looking at to have big impact on the season is Mekhi Lemon. Obviously, he's probably going to be the wide receiver 2, maybe 3 to start the year. My money's on 2. But then you look at Eli Stowers. Us Philly fans know what Eli Stowers is going to be. He's going to sit behind Dallas Goedert. Like Dallas Goedert sat behind Zach Ertz, and Zach Ertz sat behind Brenton Selleck. That's what Eli Stowers is going to do. He'll get playtime. He'll probably be the tight end 2, hopefully not the 3. I could see Grant Calcaterra being above him on the depth chart. And then Markel Bell. He is the Lane Johnson replacement for when Lane Johnson hangs up the cleats. And Cole Payton, again, just quarterback depth, who might not even make the roster. Mitch Morris, he's a guard. I could see him making the roster and playing for Landon Dickerson or Tyler Steen if they go down. And then you have, I'm sorry how I'm about to pronounce this, Cole Winnishashki, who's a safety. I don't see him making a big impact. And Uwe Bernard, who we already know is not going to play a lot. Everyone knows Uwe Bernard, the crazy D-Tech, goal from Nigeria. He probably won't play. He is very developmental, obviously. Now, here is what I think the biggest thing about this Eagles offseason is, besides something like the A.J. Brown trade that we already talked about. They have, for the first time in a long time, since about 2020, they've kind of completely revamped their coaching staff, specifically offense. So looking at it, offensive coordinator Sean Mannion. I think he could be a really great offensive coordinator, but we don't have anything to go off. He coached one college game that was meaningless. But he was obviously in that system that every coach wants to be a part of, the Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay system. Now we look at offensive line, and this is Chris Cutler. And if you don't know him, I believe he was the Vikings offensive line coordinator last season. That's what he is for us as well. I don't know if I said offensive coordinator. I'm a little worried about him. Obviously, he will not be no Jeff Stoutland. Obviously, he's not going to be Jeff Stoutland. But I do think he could maybe help the O-line. I don't know. I'm nervous about it. And then we're looking at the run game coordinator and tight end coordinator. It's Ryan Mahaffley. I don't think there'll be such a change between him and Jason Michael. They kind of run the same thing. Again, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't nervous, because last year the run game was bad. And he does look similar to Jason Michael in terms of how he runs his run game. Now, defensive line and assistant head coach is Clint Hurd. He deserves that. He's been with Philadelphia. There's nothing to comment about with that. Now, secondary. This one's rough. Mike Pellegrino was brought in as the new secondary coach. He will not be, the secondary probably won't be as good behind him. Just because Christian Parkinson, oh my God. I hate that the Cowboys got him, but he is that good. He really kind of made Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So it sucks that he's gone. And then we just retained some other assistant coaches. Everything that I didn't just mention, actually. Now, I'm not going to go through every Philadelphia Eagles 2026 game, but I will highlight a few, and I'll give you my ceilings up here, and floor for what I do think this team could be. Now, I'm going to start week 1. Week 1 is against the Commanders. Now, I think the Eagles beat the Commanders week 1, especially because it's a home game. And then, looking at week 4 against the Rams. If you asked me 2 months ago who I thought would win this game, I tell you Eagles, because Eagles for the past few years have owned the Rams. But the Rams are the best team on paper in football right now. And then they have a rough 3-week stretch where week 7, 8, and 9 they play the Cowboys, the Commanders, and the Giants. And I do think the Eagles will drop a game. I think they actually will go 2-1. And I think the one that they will lose will be a sneaky game to the Giants. I think they beat the Cowboys at home. I do think they'll beat the Cowboys at home. I think they'll sweep the Commanders this year. I am hoping Jaden Daniels stays healthy, though. But I do think the Giants will beat them at home. And I'm not high on the Giants this year. Obviously, I'm an Eagles fan. And then we look at the later part in the schedule. Week 15, 16, and 17. Seahawks, Texans, and Niners. I think the Eagles win one of those games, and I think it's against the Niners. So there's a rough stretch of Eagles games here. And for their floor, I think their floor is 10-7. I do think it could be 9-8, but there's just some of these games I can't imagine them losing. There's some games I'm a little iffy on. The Bears game, obviously we know the Bears destroyed the Eagles last year, but I think that could go either way. The Jags game. If the Jags are feeling themselves, we know what the Jags can do after what they demonstrated at the end of last season. I just think the Eagles do outmatch them in terms of personnel, both offensively and defensively. And then obviously, I think they'll split with the Cowboys. I think the Giants split could happen. We play them week 18. I did say I think they will beat us when we're at home. So I think the floor is 10-7, but the ceiling is 13-4. Which I know that's a pretty big range. 3 wins is a lot in the NFL. But this team looks very good on paper. They have one of the best teams on paper in the league. Obviously they're not as loaded as the Rams are after this offseason, but they are still ridiculously loaded. I know this is a very long video, and I don't normally do long form. I don't really expect anyone to watch this, but if you did watch it, thank you. I am going to do more teams. I'm thinking I'm either just going to continue with the NFC East, or I'm going to branch out and do my friends' teams first, which is mainly the Bills and then the Chiefs. We'll see, though. So just thank you for watching if you actually watched the whole thing, which I don't really expect anyone to, but thank you, and have a great day, and remember to spread some positivity.